Hello and good evening, everybody, and I'd like to welcome everyone to episode 46 of Album Rant. Tonight is Friday, May the 10th. It's about 6:42 p.m., and I am more than ready to get on with tonight's episode. And I thought it might be a pretty good time to return to the world of Led Zeppelin. This is going to be my second overall album rant on Led Zeppelin, and my first one discussing their early work. And I have chosen to focus my efforts tonight on their 1969 debut effort, appropriately just entitled Led Zeppelin. So there you go, self-titled debut and everything. Now, as you guys probably know, and as I've said many times on this channel, this album was a complete and total game changer. Now, before this came out, basically the most hard-rocking artists out there were among the likes of The Who, or Pink Floyd, or The Beatles, or who else? The Rolling Stones, and they were good for what they were, maybe not quite my style. Well, some of their latter stuff did become something that I was really into, but this was really the album, this was really the artist that kind of inspired other artists to take that next step into a more aggressive hard rock sound. But before I even get into this album and everything, let me just give you a quick recap of how we got here. This band originated out of the remnants of another hard rock band called the Yardbirds, whom you may or may not have heard of. If you haven't, well, okay. And I'm just going to be totally honest, they are not really my style of music either. I tried to listen to some of them, or some of their material, and it just didn't really do it for me. I understand they're legendary. I understand they're very popular. I understand a lot of people really love them, and I totally respect that. Just not for me. But as they broke up, pretty much every member went on to different things, off to different opportunities and chances to succeed in other fields, except for one member by the name of Jimmy Page. That's right, the one and only Jimmy Page. He was the only member to still be around. Well, he started circulating the globe and he found some other members to make a new band out of, namely Robert Plant, John Paul Jones, and John Bonham. And initially, they were called the New Yardbirds. And I am so glad that didn't stick. Eventually, the band evolved into what we now know today as Led Zeppelin. And apparently, their very first record company gave them a ton of freedom to pretty much do whatever they want. And, well, that was the right move. I mean, we all know what happens when studios and record companies interfere. Sometimes things don't really turn out very well. But initially, in their very early days, and I guess their club days, before they had an actual album out, they performed a lot of Yardbird covers. Makes sense. They also wrote a few songs by the names of Communication Breakdown and How Many More Times. They also played a lot of covers, a lot of rearrangements, I guess you could say, of old folk and blues songs. And yes, these guys were very, very much heavily influenced by folk music and blues music. Namely, I Can't Quit You Baby, You Shook Me, and Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. Well, after all of that, they finally, in January of 1969, geez, that was a long time ago, they released their very first album, their debut album by the name of Led Zeppelin, which is what you see in front of you, and that is what I am going to be talking about today, or tonight actually. And as I said, this album is going to include a lot of stuff from those very, very early days. From those days when they were just performing in clubs, getting gigs wherever they could. And let's go ahead and take a look at the back. So here we go, and whoa, man, that's Quite a back cover, I guess. But we have the band right here basically staring us right in the face. So let's see who these people are. We have John Bonham. May he rest in peace. He is the drummer and known as one of the greatest drummers of all time. We have Robert Plant. He was on lead vocals and apparently the harmonica. Okay. Notable contribution, I guess. Then down here we have the man, Jimmy Page, and he is most well known for his lead guitar work, but you can see he did some other stuff there as well, but mostly various guitars, so I guess he's still the lead guitarist. And then over there we have John Paul Jones, namely on the bass, but apparently also plays the organ and backing vocals, and that is all fine and good. But let's go ahead and take a look at side number one. Now, the thing is this. When these guys first started, a lot of their songs were very, very long. Well, let me back up. When I say long, I mean 6+ minutes. Yeah, that's nothing for bands like Rush and Yes. That's nothing. But for a record company that wants to get the band's music on the radio, 6 to 8 minute songs were not really doing it back then. So they highly, highly encourage the band to kind of, tone it down a bit, kind of simplify their approach, and write some stuff that's a little bit shorter and a little bit more radio accessible. And that essentially led to the very first song off the very first album by Led Zeppelin, entitled Good Times, Bad Times. In the days of my youth, I was told what it means to be a man. And the second that song started, everything changed. All of a sudden, what was happening was people were hearing a sound they had never heard before. They had never heard anything so bombastic, so heavy, nothing with so much of an aggressive kick to it. It just blew audiences away. Yes, I totally get it. If we compare these guys to current metal artists or even metal artists from the 80s, it's pretty tame, but again, this was the year 1969, okay? A lot of people, well, some of the most well-known artists at the time were the Monkees, so again, these guys blew the Monkees away. But this was, like I said, a very, very short song. It's only about 2.5 minutes or so, but it was very commercial sounding. It was definite radio bait, even though it was more hard-hitting and had a very much of an extra kick to it. And it's an absolute classic. It is a very well-written song, and I love everything about it. Unfortunately, the band never really performed it live all that often, which I'm actually kind of surprised about, but according to John Paul Jones, this was one of the most difficult songs he ever had to play. I have a very hard time believing that, but again, it's coming straight from the horse's mouth, so I guess I probably should believe it. But this song did not even make their box set. Yeah, the box set, the 4-disc compilation that spans their entire career. This song was not even on there, and it's really odd because it's one of their biggest hits ever, but whatever, at least it's out there and at least we get to hear it. But again, that opening, dun dun, dun dun, it's absolutely incredible. I love it. And then we move into the second track called Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. And here's the thing. You can see right here that this is credited to Jimmy Page and Robert Plant. It is also credited to some other blues singer from back in the 50s, I want to say. I could be wrong, but I'm not quite sure what their actual name is. Looks like Bredin. I could be totally wrong, but this is actually a cover, sort of. This was more of a blues song that, like I said, was very It originated a long, long time ago, I think the 50s or so. It was later covered by Joan Baez, of all people. And then later, Led Zeppelin came along and did their own approach to it. So, again, they definitely changed things a lot about this. They definitely put their own spin on it. And that's probably why Jimmy Page and Robert Plant get a songwriting credit on this, because I'm sure there's a ton of stuff in here that was not in the original version. But anyways, it starts off very, very soft. And I'll be honest, as a teenager, when I first heard the start of that song, I was like, this is kind of too soft for me. I'm not sure if I'm really feeling it. So for the longest time, I just skipped right over it and went to the next song. Well, a little while later, I finally got around to hearing the whole thing. I was like, man, I sure did not call that one very well, did I? Because this song rocks. As soon as that little soft intro kind of gets past us, it really starts kicking up and it goes dun 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 dun, and it's great. It's definitely acoustic bass, but that's not a bad thing at all. It almost sounds like I don't know, it almost sounds like Spanish music, I guess you could say. Kind of like what you would hear at a bullfighter match. But it's absolutely incredible, and it totally, totally rocks. But again, this song was very much not a hard rock song when it was initially written. Led Zeppelin made it a hard rock song, and I think it's a lot better for that. And it's actually twice the length of the Joan Baez version. This thing is like 6.5 minutes, so again, at the time, not very radio friendly, but who cares? It's great, it's awesome, I recommend it. Now we move to track number 3, You Shook Me All Night Long. And yes, as a teenager, I was a big AC/DC fan. I'm like, wait, this sounds like a very drugged out psychological version of You Shook Me All Night Long by AC/DC. Or I should say, You Shook Me All Night Long sounds like a very straightforward version of You Shook Me, because this predates You Shook Me All Night Long by about 11 years or so. But yeah, this thing is totally crazy. It is another quote-unquote cover. Again, I'm not sure if it's a full cover. No one in the band has a writing credit on this, so I'm guessing it is a straight cover by someone named Willie Dixon, who I think was a blues singer several decades previously. But again, Zeppelin definitely put their own spin on this, and it's totally crazy. It's got a nice bluesy rhythm to it, though. Dun 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 dun. Totally love it. And yes, it does kind of sound a lot like Lovin' Touchin' Squeezin' by Journey, who I did talk about in my last song tournament. Yes, I did. That is correct. But again, this thing is nuts. It's still over 6.5 minutes, and it is psychedelic rock at its best. And I really, really love it. But this thing totally segues into another song called Dazed and Confused. And it was inspired by another bluesy song, but you can see right there, Jimmy Page has a writing credit on it. So I'm guessing he did make very, very significant contributions to this. But again, You Shook Me and Dazed and Confused, they kind of flow together. There's no actual break between them. And I think that's actually pretty interesting. I was actually kind of shocked by that. The first time I heard this on CD, I did not expect that, but it's there, so you got that. But it starts out with a very, very good bass intro. Do 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 do. And yes, it is another stone cold Led Zeppelin classic. And again, Robert Plant comes in, and man, you just feel this guy's pain. He just has such pure, raw emotion behind it, and it's so incredibly great. Still very psychedelic. In the middle, we have a section where it kind of tones down a bit, and we get a whole like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And man, it sounds like such a drug den in there, but it is an incredible song. This is played live often, or as I should say, it was played live often. And there are two live versions out there. One that was released in 1976 on the Song Remains the Same soundtrack, and another one released in 2003 on How the West Was Won, yet it was recorded in 1973, I believe. And yeah, they jam out a lot during this song. Both of those versions are pushing half an hour. And I just gotta be honest, while that is a pretty significant accomplishment, I just gotta ask you this. Do we really need Dazed and Confused to go on for half an hour? I gotta be honest, if I was at that concert, I'd be like, okay guys, okay, yep, you've had your little jam session, let's move on to another song. Wait, no, what, you're still jamming? Okay, that's fine, that's fine. Okay, you've gone on for 12 minutes now, I think we're ready to go on to something up. You're gonna keep going, I guess. And I gotta be honest, I probably would be a little bit frustrated, but still, listening on CD, it's quite the trip, I'll say that. But if I had to pick a favorite from side one, ooh, definitely going to be a toss-up here. But tonight, I'm going to go with my gut, and I'm probably going to give the edge to You Shook Me. Another day, it might be Dazed and Confused, but I think I've heard that one a few too many times. So that's going to conclude side one, so let's move on to side two. Sounds like a logical course of action, and it all starts off with Your Time Is Gonna Come. Kicks off with an organ intro, and I really, kind of dig that. And after that organ intro, it gets kind of soft, very acoustic. Robert Plant comes in. It's a very upbeat and jovial song, and it's quite the shift from the sheer madness that we heard on the previous couple of songs. But, it does start kicking in, and the whole band is singing together. And man, these guys have got good harmonies. They're all going, your time is gonna come. That was terrible. I know I'm a terrible singer. I say that every time, but sometimes I just can't help myself. Well, apparently, this song is about a deceitful woman who one day will pay the price. Not exactly sure who. Not exactly sure what the backstory is there, but apparently it is about someone who's going to pay the price, hence the fact that her time is going to come. But I really enjoy this one, and this one is also, it's pretty short, but it doesn't really get played live that much, or at least it didn't, which is kind of a shame. I mean, it's not my favorite Zeppelin song out there, but I definitely do enjoy it. But much like going from You Shook Me to Dazed and Confused, going from Your Time Is Gonna Come to Black Mountainside, there is no break. All you hear is this big crash at the end of Your Time Is Gonna Come, and then Black Mountainside starts kicking in. It's an instrumental, it's an acoustic instrumental, and it is very good for what it is. Gives Jimmy Page kind of a chance to show off his abilities, which he has every right to do, but I mean, it's a good instrumental. I mean, usually I'm not too big of a fan of acoustic work, but on this, it's just so well written. It just works. I just gotta say that. And I really do enjoy Black Mountainside. But then the song just completely just comes to an end very sporadically. And we segue into Communication Breakdown, which is probably the last really big hit single from this album. It was another one of those songs that was intentionally written to be short. It's only about 2 minutes and 30 seconds or so. This was definite radio bait, but it's fine because it's very good radio bait. This is a more straightforward number, and it kicks off with a very good guitar intro. And yeah, I have heard a lot of rock songs that have definitely taken inspiration from Communication Breakdown. Most notably, one I was just listening to today, actually, would be Reckless by Sammy Hagar. I can definitely see the influence he may have had from Communication Breakdown. But, it's pretty straightforward. It's a good song. It's a good track. And I definitely give it my endorsement. I definitely give it my recommendation. But then we're going to come to I Can't Quit You, Baby. And This is another cover. It's another Willie Dixon cover, and I was never really a fan of this one for the longest time, mostly because it is very much a blues song. And at the time, I really wasn't too much into the blues, but now I have really come to appreciate it a lot more. It's very slow, but it's got a very good rhythm to it, and, there's a lot that could be said about it, but it's definitely not my favorite from this side, but I still think it is pretty good. There is another version of this on the Coda album, and I actually think I prefer that version a little bit better, but that's not to take away from this one at all. This is still definitely a Led Zeppelin classic, and I still do recommend it. But all of that is just preparation from what I consider to be this album's big magnum opus. How Many More Times? Underrated masterpiece. It starts out with, again, another really good bass intro. But unlike Dazed and Confused, this one's a lot faster. Do 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 do. I can actually play it on the bass, and I am pretty proud of that. But it's very, very fast, like I said. And once again, the entire band is just slowly and slowly starting to come in until it all just explodes, and this thing absolutely rocks. Robert Plant is still singing the blues here. He's got a very bluesy rhythm on this, and I think that really adds to it. But if you actually listen to the lyrics, some of them, I could be wrong about this, but some of them seem pretty sexual. But this thing is 8 minutes and 27 seconds. It is the longest song on this album, and I think it is worth every single second. In the middle, we have another kind of soft, kind of trippy section where we get a whole lot of whoa, whoa. And Robert Plant is, again, killing it. He's telling a story about himself and some woman or something. I don't quite know the story, but he says something like, now I have 10 children on my hands, and now soon there's going to be number 11 or something. I probably said that incorrectly, but it's okay. The fact still remains. He's talking about all the children he has. And towards the end of this section, which I guess I would call the interlude, starts picking up a bit. So it's going, don't, don't. And slowly and slowly and slowly it starts picking up again until finally, for the last minute or so, it goes back into that main riff. It starts rocking once again, and it concludes so incredibly well. I love How Many More Times. It is my favorite song from side 2, and it's my favorite song from this album. It is a shame it is not more widely recognized, because I think it's a really, really great track. And that is going to conclude my review of Led Zeppelin by Led Zeppelin. So let's go ahead and flip this right around right here, and honestly, do I recommend this album? Absolutely, I do. And I may have said this in a previous episode, but Led Zeppelin really means a lot to me. And here's the reason why. When I was in high school, I was really into bands like Black Sabbath and Judas Priest and Metallica and Merciful Fate. And at least with my mom and other people I knew, all of those bands were a little too hardcore for them. Well, I discovered Led Zeppelin, and Led Zeppelin was not soft enough for me. I loved Led Zeppelin, but on the same hand, it was not too hardcore for those other people, and so this was one of those artists that I could talk about with friends and family, and it never got awkward, and for that reason, Zeppelin means a lot to me. Were they the first heavy metal band? I don't know. They have been called heavy metal. If they are heavy metal, I would call them the first heavy metal band. If they're not heavy metal, then Black Sabbath is the first heavy metal band. Whether they are or not, I don't know, but they rock. So anyways, thank you very much for joining me this evening. Next week, I am going to give you what you play for, but until then, have a very pleasant evening.